It's just that part that's quiet.
Okay.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. It's Wednesday, time for another inspiring conversation, time for another live session. Here in August, time flies, it's crazy. It feels like yesterday that we kicked off the year, and then we had the trade show in March, and now summer is almost over. But whilst everybody is on vacation or on the road, I'm glad we have quite a few of our regular friends and family here with us today, joining us via Zoom here at the lounge. And we just kickstarted our live stream over on YouTube. So for everybody joining us over there, welcome. One and all, thanks for chiming in today. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments for our special guests tonight, please make yourselves heard in the comments. And I would love to bring in your thoughts to the show as well. So without further ado, here he is, the one and only Casey. And I'm gonna butcher your last name, I'm afraid, but
Really easy. It's just vowels. Aldulaimi.
well, there you go. Much better than if I would have tried. It's probably easier if I would try to say it in German, but yeah,
Go ahead,
thanks
try it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
thanks
Hit it in German.
Aldulaimi.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, there you go.
You see, your German's better than your English.
Yeah, well, that's what most people say to me. Well, given that it's my mother tongue, it probably be. It better should be, to be honest. But yeah, isn't there this old saying like there's only two languages for people in the US, English and bad English, right? So
Right.
maybe similar for Austrians with German and bad German. Casey, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a privilege to have you, and I'm really, really glad we could make this work. And it's good to have you.
My pleasure, man. It's good to see an old friend.
Absolutely. Casey, your background is in psychology and sales training. How long does it take you to figure out who the other person is sitting across from you on the table?
Usually, it doesn't take long. Um, it depends on the situation. If it's a direct contact in front of me, it depends on how much information I have about them and stuff like that. If I'm watching somebody's completely different because they're not under the gun. They don't have their walls up. So it doesn't usually take long. And in a general conversation, when it comes to like a sales meeting, under 30 minutes, and I'm pretty comfortable with all the tools that I really need.
Part of the reason I asked the question as the opener is you're one of the, I dare say, few people where even I experienced, we sit down, we kick off our conversation, and it feels like we've known each other forever. And that's a rare treat with people, especially these days when, and please excuse me saying so, but with social media, AI, everything that happened post-pandemic, people have gotten a little awkward when it comes to face-to-face conversations and to just having a chat with your pals when you're sitting at a pub having a beer, or when you sit at the lounge and have a cigar. I think that's still one of the safe havens because people who frequent the cigar lounge are used to having a proper in-depth face-to-face conversation. But with young people nowadays, that's not a given anymore. And so I always find it charming, and I'm very happy when I meet people like yourself, where you sit down with each other, you start to chat, and there's this connection, and it feels like you've known each other for a very long time. And what I'm curious about is, do you think that is just law of attraction, in the sense that people who are carved out of the same wood and who share the same values somehow tend to find each other? and happen to end up doing either business with each other, developing friendships, or coming together? Or would you also think that's just part of being a good salesman, your core skill and the business that you worked in? How do you think about that?
You know, it's funny you ask that question. That kind of conversation comes up a lot with us. Part of it is the fact that a lot of us in the cigar industry or in the cigar culture, we definitely have a lot of things that we have in common. You know, we like the culture. We A lot of us like putting on a sports coat, like yourself, like putting on a nice dress shirt. Um, when social media evolved, I was a little bit older than most people. I was about 35 years old. I've been on social media for about 15 years. Um, Most people use social media almost like something to try, something to break out of their shelves, or something to become something else, something to they were too uncomfortable in person talking, so this was a branch out. For me, it just became another way to communicate, like a telephone call. So I really didn't turn it to anybody else. This is who I've always been. What you see is what you get. This is who I am in social media, live. People know me. They're like, you're just, that's just who I am. I've always been outgoing. I like people. I naturally like people. I naturally like talking to people. Um, and I think what it really comes down to is your comfort level with yourself, really. I mean, how comfortable are you with yourself? Are you really the man that is in front of somebody, or are you playing a different role and you have to put on a show? You know, um, I started my life out right after college and a little bit of the military in sales and telephone sales, door-to-door sales. I grew massive door-to-door organizations for years before the cigar business, massive, nationwide from tiny small offices. I grew out a large insurance company from a closet to about 125 people on the sales floor right before 2009 when the stock market crashed, 2008, 2009. And so my evolution was very natural, but this is just who I am, and I just like people. I think the problem nowadays is nobody wants to talk really. And if they are talking, they're talking at you and not with you. It's not a conversation. And especially the younger generation, it's mostly text. So a lot of them, you find them when you are in a conversation with them, they're kind of socially inept. They have a very hard time maintaining conversation, let alone about any subject matter. I lost you. You're you're on mute.
What do you think ultimately makes a great salesman? Do you think it's a quality that you carry in you, and you just have to find a way to channel that or express it naturally? Or would you say it's unquestionably a skill you have to learn and master through very specific training?
I think 60% personality. I think 40% training. I really believe anybody can become a salesperson depending on how badly they want to become a salesperson, with enough training, because I trained people my whole life and I've watched people that are introverts that when they enter the room, they're a mouse. And after 2, 3 months, they're one of my top people on the floor or in the field. It just depends how badly you want stuff in life. You know, um, Really, life is about the direction you want to take and how badly you want to commit. Most people just don't commit. And I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different industries, but really it revolves around the same thing, all of them, the human relationship, the relationship that me and you can bond over a 5 minute period of time, a 20 minute period of time, a 10-year period of time. Really doesn't matter the period of time. And hey, Albert. And really, you got to like people. You can't put on a, my biggest, my biggest pet peeve sometimes is watching people in a passionate industry like cigars and they don't really like people. They barely smoke the cigar, and they took a sales job. And the sad part is that is the worst thing for the company that they represent possible, because that's all very obvious to most people that know people. You either like people or you don't like people. You're either really there because you want to do something and represent. And that became evident to me in the beginning of my cigar industry journey when I visited a store. I am about to light up Cigar of the Year, La Bijou 1922 in the box press torpedo format, which is one of my favorite cigars of all time. Beautiful cigar. I noticed that when I visited a store, and it was very obvious to me, and Andy knows the store because he visited those stores also. And the owner said to me, listen, you've been here 4 times a year for 2 years straight. My number one brand, I won't even mention, but he only visits me about 2 or 3 times a year. So why are you here? I don't buy your stuff. I go, I'm the territory manager for the brand. If I don't show you what we carry, what we're developing, our portfolio, what we're doing in marketing, how would you ever know about that? I represent the brand. I'm not a salesperson. I'm really here just to represent the brand. And what we do, me and you in the partnership, that's up to you. But if you believe that I get add benefit to your business, I can bring clientele to your business or add anything beneficial, then we can go into business together. And to me, it was always a partnership rather than I'm selling somebody anything, because I want their business to grow. I want to do events in your store. I want to promote in your store. And, to me, it was always about the consumer, especially doing events. Sometimes it would be funny. Somebody would walk in, and everybody knows I represented Alec Bradley for years, and I'm a huge Alec Bradley fan way before I started with the company. Somebody would walk into the store during an event. I'd walk them in the humidor, and I'd sell them 3 Padrones and an Opus X. And the owner would look at me like, are you with Padron or Opus X today? I go, listen, let me ask you a question. Is this your store? He's like, yes. Are these your customers? He's like, yes. I'm here to make sure that your customers get the greatest experience they could possibly have. Doesn't matter what they buy. If they describe to me their palate today that they're craving a Padron because of that dark chocolate leaf and that beautiful flavor and that dark Nicaraguan flavor, then that's what they're craving. So of course, now what happens in those situations is that they turn around and always want to buy my stuff afterwards because I was honest with them. They're like, okay, this guy sold us stuff that he doesn't even represent. And I think also one of the things when I started out in the industry, I smoked a lot of different brands and the owner knew it. And he kind of appreciated that, even though he knew that 80% of what I smoked was Alec Bradley. I also talked about other cigars because how can you talk about your cigars if you don't know the other cigars? How can, when a consumer walks in and says, I smoke A, B, C, D, and you're like, oh, this is the greatest cigar in the universe. You got to smoke this one. No, that's not really true. The greatest cigar in the universe is what fits his palate. And, that's just the way it works. Think about the consumer, you always win.
I love everything that I'm hearing, and I couldn't agree more with you. Given that you worked in many different industries, always sales related, but with different products, with different target audiences, in different areas of the US and maybe even international customers, do you think ultimately it doesn't matter if you sell cigars, a drink, insurances, you name it, it always boils down to the same fundamental core principles and tools of the trade, if you will, to be successful in sales?
Yeah, the number one tool that most salespeople forget is the listening. The greatest salesman in the world listens more than he talks usually, because the person in front of him is giving every bit of data that he needs to understand that person. What is his hot button? Sometimes there's 2 people in a meeting that you have, especially when it comes to consumable goods or hard goods, like let's say a car or a motorhome, and there's a man and a woman, and you dang better figure out which one of them is the buyer and which one is tagging along. And you better not address the other one improperly. And if it's the woman that's the buyer, you better focus on her. If it's the man that's the buyer, you better focus on him, but you give her the respect too. It's most people don't know how to do that because they're too busy trying to get out everything they have because they've been thinking about it the whole time and it's causing them anxiety that I need to say this, I need to say that, I need to say this, rather than just being natural and having a conversation. So I think a lot of times that happens, that we forget to listen. We forget to really hear what they're saying to you. And they always tell you. And I got a lot of lessons early on in my career about not making mistakes, not prejudging somebody of what they could buy, not misunderstanding what they're saying because you don't understand. I had a guy one that time come in wanting to buy a Cadillac. He goes, I want it really sporty. I go, oh, okay. What exactly do you mean? Those spoked wheels? I want a Cadillac with spoked wheels. That would make it really sporty. Everybody has a different definition of what they're thinking about. So understand what they're really trying to say to you rather than getting a predetermined notion in your head. And that's really important.
Cigars obviously are one of those products that are passion driven. The people who are part of the culture and eventually part of the industry mostly come from being a cigar lover first, and then taking on some role or some form of closer involvement with the industry. And on the one hand, that's a beautiful attribute. On the other hand, there's a slight risk of ending up with a lot of, and I dare say this with a lot of respect, but quote unquote hobbyists in the industry who believe just because they're presumably good at smoking cigars, or they smoke a lot, they're good cigar industry professionals. And that's not always necessarily the case, also depending on the role that you fulfill. Where do you think the industry needs to improve or be better at either bringing in some of these people or equipping them with the right tools to be successful in their respective roles?
That's a great question. On the manufacturer side is one thing. On the store side is another thing. The retail side has a lot of hobbyists. We have a lot of hobbyists in America. And it's good for the business because it creates a little bit of width. But sometimes it's bad for the business and it's bad for the consumer because we lose a lot of consumers. There is something that in the cigar business never goes really accounted for. How many consumers do we actually lose? Forget the ones we gain. The guy that walks into the store, for whatever reason, wants to try a cigar today. And if you don't give him the right cigar, he never comes back. And it takes a lot of knowledge to be able to ask questions to figure out what we're going to give somebody. A lot of times when I was in retail, somebody would walk in, and the worst thing about us as men is we hate to ask. We have this massive pride that we know everything. A man is never lost because he's never going to pull over on the side of the road and ask somebody for directions. And thank God for the stupid map quests and the shit on our phones, because these guys would still be lost. So most men, when they come into a cigar shop, are very different than women. Women love to ask questions. Men know. So as a retailer, and especially if you're a hobbyist, which I mean, you don't have $1 million store, you don't have $300,000 in inventory. You started this after you retired with a smaller budget and you're just moving along. You have to put those people on the right cigar. To me, it was always a palate analysis of how to make people comfortable in a humidor. I asked them about 4 or 5 questions, and they start to warm up considerably. They'd be looking around the humidor, and I go, have you smoked a lot of cigars before? Do you smoke cigars? Or any type of question, because I want to see their first reaction. Oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Oh, great. So I give them a minute or two, and they're walking around. I go, listen, let me ask you a couple questions. How do you normally take your coffee in the morning? What kind of coffee do you drink? Oh, I love my coffee with a lot of cream and a lot of sugar, or a caramel macchiato, or this or that. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so you like usually a sweeter coffee that's light. You like lighter flavors, especially in the morning. Yes, I do. Okay, great. What kind of foods do you normally like? If we went to a restaurant today, and forget if I was a chick, but if I was your friend, because we know with a woman it's a very different animal. But if I'm your friend and I say to you, hey, what kind of restaurant are you in mood for, or what kind of food do you like? Do you like spicy food? Oh, I love spicy food. Okay, all right. And we go to a bar and I take out $100 bill fresh and I go, you know, it's your birthday today. I'll buy you any drink at the bar. What do you order? Oh, I like a scotch. Okay, but what kind of scotch? Do you like a peaty scotch or do you like a sherry cask scotch that's very sweet and is very nuanced? Those type of questions will lead me to picking out a cigar for you. It gives me the basic understanding of your palate. You know, if you say to me, I'm a vodka drinker, I like a caramel macchiato in the morning, and I really don't like spicy food, what do you think I'm probably going to give you? Probably a mild Connecticut. Now, if you say to me, you know, I'm a vodka drinker. Now, why vodka drinker? Because a vodka drinker doesn't want to taste anything. He just wants to get drunk. So it's a process very different than a scotch drinker. A scotch drinker is sipping for flavor. So you really have to understand. And then there's other types of things going on. There's some guys that just want to smoke a cigar that produces a massive volume of smoke, and they'll tell you that. I like something really smoky. I like a large cigar, really smoky, very mad. Like, fine, you know? So everybody has a different reason for why they're picking up a cigar, but you really want to fulfill their needs. Now, back to your original question of hobbyists. I think the worst thing for the industry is the guy getting into the business that doesn't really have a respect for the business. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I first got in the business, I would take out a sample to give to somebody. And you could give out samples back then without even having a question. And the first thing they would say to me is, no, thank you. I don't want a rep sample. I go, what do you mean you don't want a rep sample? What other sample is there? He goes, you know, they're usually in the car. They're dried out. They throw them under the seat. They don't taste good. I'd rather buy a cigar and enjoy. I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I get it. This is not a rep sample. This is a Casey sample. They go, what do you mean? I go, well, my cigars go into a humidor for 3 months before I even give them to somebody. And I have a humidified case that I carry around and it goes in with me every night. And I check the cigars. I check the humidity. We sit down, we have a cigar, and the experience is very different. You know, how you dress for when you enter a cigar shop. You know, when I first got in the business, suit, tie, pocket square, I would walk into a store. They didn't know me from Adam. I started in one of the most difficult territories in the country, which was California. Very, very difficult market for very many reasons. But I would walk in, I go, hey, how are you, sir? I'm with Alec Bradley Cigars. Alan told me to stop by, say hello to you. Oh, we love Alan. Alan used to come into our store. And just by working for Alan Rubin, when I started in the business, was a massive boost for me because everybody loved Alan Rubin. And when I walked into stores, I had a lot of credit just for working for Alan Rubin, to be honest with you. So it opened a lot of doors. And out of all the stores, I first started with California, then I picked up Arizona and Nevada. So I had a massive Western territory. Other than retailers that don't necessarily operate their stores or are in their stores all the time, I pretty much had an open door policy because of the respect that I showed the retailer and the relationship. Come by whenever you want. Don't even call. Don't even worry about it. Stop by. And that's not really offered to a lot of people because it just depends, you know, the relationship, the give and take. So from a very early start, it was important to me to be professional. And I've always been professional in every industry, but that opened a lot of doors. How you talk, how you're dressed, how you walk in, how you don't walk in and disturb the business, how you walk in and possibly help if the retailer's busy. If I walk into a store and a retailer's busy, I'm helping out, especially if he's got no staff there or low staff. I'm cleaning ashtrays. I'm helping people in the humidor. He might not even know who I am yet. And I'm cleaning ashtrays in his store. He's looking at me like, who's this guy in the suit cleaning ashtrays? If you're busy and you're a retailer, I'm going to help you. It's my job to be there to help you. Maybe not to clean ashtrays, but if I feel like doing it, I'm doing it. If I see a consumer, I'm helping him. He doesn't even know what, oh, I'm just helping a John over here. Don't worry. Whatever you need, I'll help you out. That's important in building relationships. You know, are you really there for the retailer or are you just there for yourself?
And Casey, I think that is true for every part of the equation, whether it's your relationship with the retailer or the retailer's relationship with the end consumer, all the way back to the brand. I think it always boils down to what you said earlier, and that is that loving and caring attitudes and core that you have in you, and you can't help but try to humbly serve the other person so that he or she gets what they're looking for in that specific moment. And that doesn't have to be what you initially wanted out of the whole transaction, because that comes later. And at some point, I would say it's probably a natural consequence of the relationship that you form. But it's about having a loving and caring intention first to help the other person or to give them whatever they need. And the way I think of it, coming from a hospitality background, is that's the essence of hospitality, and the purest form is my job, and not even my job, but my calling is to be there for you, to create an environment, to foster a holistic experience for you to feel comfortable, to feel at home, to feel respected and well treated or well taken care of. And if all
Absolutely.
that comes together, then you hit that magic spot, and everything else can follow. But it's about that pure intention in the first place, about taking care of the other person.
Serving others as a whole is the essence of a lot of things in life, and we lose sight of that. I always tell people there's a difference between an Eastern and a Western philosophy, and it's a very different philosophy. Eastern philosophy is about us. Western philosophy is more about me. And that's just the way that the philosophy of the two have gone that way. The closer you are to the East, the closer it is that way. The closer you are to the West, the more it is that way. That's just the way it is. That's what we've become. Part of it driven by economies, part of it driven by systems, philosophy. But, serving others is very important in life. Your calling in life is to serve others, and whatever you want really comes out of that. When I started with Alec Bradley, it was a really big love for me because I really loved cigars. I really loved the brand. I really loved Alan and Ralph Montoya. I'm sure you know Ralph Montoya. And I really loved working for George Sosa. Everybody said, "Oh, George Sosa, Naval Master Chief, he's very tough." Me and George had the greatest relationship. And when he was extra tough with me, I knew I needed it. And I guess coming from a little bit of a military background, it helped that I was able to do that. A lot of people carry too big of an ego. They want to walk through the door with a 6-foot head. It doesn't work. Who are you? Just be real. So it was a great company fit for me, especially. I don't know if I could sell a product if I don't love it, especially when it comes to consumable luxury goods. I got this great job offer 4 years ago, and I almost feel stupid about it now. But it was with Lafroig Scotch. You're familiar with Lafroig?
Absolutely.
National ambassador, Lafroig Scotch, U.S., expense account, good money, all the above. One problem. I don't like peaty Scotch. I could not every day drink peated Scotch and tell the consumer how much I loved it. I can't smoke flavored cigars all day and tell people how much I love it. It would go against why I sell luxury consumable goods. I got to love the cigars. I got a couple of job offers from companies that the cigars were decent, but I didn't really love them. It would make it very difficult for me. I'd much rather go sell cars because I can sell a car I don't like and drive home in a car that I like. But the reason why we sell consumable goods is we have to love the consumable good. You give me Balvenie, a Bunnahabhain, or one of the scotches that I really love with a sherry cask, I'm good. But I can't go all day telling people how much I love peaty scotch and I don't really love it. I like some peat. There's a couple of stuff that I really like. Highland Park makes a Dark Origins, which is a peated scotch in a sherry cask. It's amazing combination of flavors. They just balance amazing, especially with a lot of cigars. Balvenie has a couple of peat weeks, which are also sherry casks and peat. So, I mean, there's something there. It has to balance, but it has to be true to who I am as a person, especially in a consumable good.
Do you think that's a fundamental flaw with a lot of things that happen nowadays, particularly on social media, but also when I think about, thinking back to our earlier conversation part, sales training, and nowadays everybody's a coach and everybody has good ideas and great concepts and even better sales pitches for making other people's lives better. But then when you look at it, it's like it stinks like marketing and sales funnel and like your just run off the mill average sales pitch. And that guy is just in for the money and he's going to sell you the same shit he sold to 100,000 other folks. And you see that over and over. And funnily enough, without going too far with my question, but you see that in so many aspects of conversations happening online now, where whether it's the 5 a.m. club or everybody trying to be better at life, really being better in life with your relationships, with this and that, and everybody shares all the wonderful books they have presumably read, and they probably never touched a single one of them, but everybody's just always striving to be better. And at the end of the day, it all feels so shallow, and you don't really feel what you called some of that Eastern touch before, where it's about us, not just about me, me, me.
Oh, that's deep and complicated, and it all goes back to authenticity. Are you authentically who you are? Is this what really people get? Um, is it a big show? Is everything you post a big show, or is this something you really enjoy? You know, um, Inner balance is important too. A lot of people don't have inner balance, and it makes them very uncomfortable around others. And it's easy to see, you could put on this loud sales pitch and, 1995, I got the greatest TV in the universe. We're going to give you a great deal. We're going to throw in an antenna. I got a remote control, and my Uncle Steve is going to deliver it to your house. Okay. That's cool. Crazy Eddie worked for a long time in New York. I don't know if you ever seen Crazy Eddie commercials. You could look him up sometime. But it was this loud little obnoxious guy, and he would yell at you, "Hey, I'm Crazy Eddie. I got the greatest deals in the universe today. We're giving it all away." And it was always like that. It was always a 90-mile an hour, 15-second elevator pitch. It's cool. It's cool. It's fun. It's cool. It's energetic. But is it authentic? And does it really, really touch people? And who are you really touching? Are they really your consumer? A lot of smaller cigar brands have built up their portfolios on being very good on social media. There's a handful of guys that I say that had a dramatic change of a brand. And I talk about it all the time. I think Jonathan Carney was probably one of the best at it, where you could visibly see how much he affected La Flor Dominicana. Because Jonathan Carney, when he came on to La Flor Dominicana, he embodied the brand. He was the. A little bit after him was Terrence Riley, came along with Aganorsa and completely changed the brand because he embodied the brand. And Rocky was the originator of that way before everybody else, But there are specific brands that live and die by the guy that leads the brand. The problem with manufacturers is they don't realize that. They want to believe that it's the product they're selling. And no matter how good your product is, in our industry, we're not the alcohol business. The alcohol business, you don't even need to know anybody in the alcohol business to drink their alcohol. You really don't. Cigars is a little bit different. it's a very emotional industry. It's those that make cigars, a lot of them are very passionate about what they do. You know, when you see a guy like Carlito Fuente, who I have a massive amount of respect for, Carlito Fuente. Really, in all honesty, the respect came later on when I got in the industry. But when I first started out, it was because I loved smoking the cigars. They brought me a lot of joy. So that's where that came from. It was always, this guy makes amazing cigars and I love them. He even is on the road. He is even out there representing his brand. So when I tell a manufacturer, when they ask me, you know, and I've sat down with a handful of manufacturers, what's the difference between success and failure if you have good cigars? It's really the guy leading the company. If you're a farmer, stick to farming and bring in a professional sales manager that knows how to hire, train, and motivate your forces, that knows how to coach them, that knows how to go out with a salesman, travel with a salesman, and after every visit, pulls them into the car and says, you did really good in there, but if you did ABC, you could have got EBC in return, and be able to break it down and explain it to him. Because if you can't help somebody get better, they're just repeating the same mistake over and over. You know, out of all the guys I've seen in the industry, there's not a lot of sales training in the industry. George Sosa, who was my boss, after a sales call, we would go back to the car and he would break it down to me. Even though I'm a master salesman, I loved hearing from a guy that was watching me. A lot of times in sales, when you're working on a sales, like a phone sales job, the greatest thing you could do is put a mirror in front of you so you could watch yourself, because you could really see the mistakes you make. You know, a lot of basic things in sales are simple. You know, on the sales floor, it was sit straight up, because when you sit straight up, your diaphragm is very different. Your voice comes out much clearer. Don't slouch in the chair because you sound horrible. And it's all basic stuff, but you have to repeat basic stuff. It's like taking a shower. You're still going to get dirty every day, so you still got to repeat this stuff. Even the guys that have been doing it 20, 30, 40 years, if you go back to the basics with them, they go, oh, wow, I forgot all about that, even though I think I do it, but it's just the basics.
That's one of the core fundamentals that we worked with in the hospitality consultancy business. We always told people never get bored with basics, because it always boils down to the same core principles. And then when you repeat that, or when you train people on that, they're like, well, it's that easy?
Yes. ABC, the very basics. The very basics.
Casey, why do you think that the industry is really not good at this? Is it an ego problem, or is it an organizational problem?
Two issues. A lot of the industry, the people that have cigar companies are either really great at farming and making cigars, or really great at the sales part and are buying the cigars. And once in a while, you get a guy that says to himself, and there's another point of this. A lot of the companies are owned by people from Latin America. Latin American men are very passionate. They are very strong-willed, and they have a hard time understanding their pluses and minuses. So just because you make great cigars, maybe you hire a guy that is fantastic at managing. You hire a guy that's fantastic at marketing, and you bring them together to have the marketing and the sales work together rather than oppose each other. And that's another conversation altogether. You know, companies that have a marketing side and a sales side and aren't really integrated. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, their marketing always works against the sales. And you could see it in how they market stuff, that, you know, you're marketing a product, but you can't back it up with sales, or you're selling a product that you can't back it up with marketing. And it's complicated, you know. There's a couple of small brands that I really love, and I've talked to the owners. The difference between what they're doing and what they could be doing really has to do with the team that they have. You know, if you got a guy that shows up that looks like he's in pajamas, unshaven, and rolls into the cigar shop trying to sell your product, how does that represent you? What is that doing for you? It could be probably hurting you more than helping you. And they just don't get it. They just don't get it. It takes professionals to do professional jobs.
Earlier, before we actually went live, you sort of hinted towards that the Pareto rule, that really you have 20% of great people accounting for roughly 80% of your sales, right? And that's probably true for both manufacturers as well as retailers, that
20/80 rule.
there's a small group of people who get it, who do it right, and the rest is sort of drag-alongs. And I don't mean this disrespectfully in any way, shape, or form, but did you see that in other industries as well? Or would you feel that's an inherent problem of the cigar industry again?
No, that's inherent to sales. The 20/80 rule, 20% of your top salespeople will carry 80% of the business. That's straight across the board. That's who we are as people as a whole. The 20/80 rule is almost with everything.
Mm-hmm.
With most things in life, the commitment level, straight across the board. How is it that 20% of that committed to everything they do? And they just are. They're committed to everything they do. People would say to me, well, he's got a clean business, but his house is a mess. It doesn't work that way. Either your house is clean and your car is clean and your business is clean and how you dress, and it's a package. You can't be, one place immaculate and the other place is a mess. It usually doesn't work that way. Exasperated. This guy uses a lot of big words.
And Ryan, remember his car was always a mess in Washington State?
Yeah. It's really important that, I think it's a philosophical system more than the 20/80 rule is commitment in life. It's in everything, what is it? Like 53% of marriages end up in divorce? Well, that leaves you with 47%. So out of that 47%, you still have a percentage of those that are really committed and the rest are just hanging on, So it's everything in life. It's athletes, you look at mixed martial arts athletes. I love MMA, mixed martial arts. I did a lot of MMA when I was younger. And the difference between the greatest MMA stars is not necessarily their physical attributes, but their mental ability. We could have the same training, but my mind is much stronger than your mind. And that's just the reality of life. The mind game is just as strong as anything else.
I don't know if Macy wants to chime in, but he posted a couple of interesting comments on the chat, and bring it on, Macy. I'm
Call me out.
To your
Sorry, I am.
what Casey has to say.
I had some fine Guatemalan gentlemen here doing had a leak, got housework going on. We're in a drought. I'm gardening. So sorry, I'm not looking like a sales rep of a cigar industry should. So please excuse my motley.
What do you sell, Macy?
Lawsuits. I'm a lawyer.
Oh, I thought you said cigar. Threw me off. Okay, all right.
No, I'm saying no. I used to sell insurance and financial products, and I've done a lot of sales training. So you're just
when you're a lawyer working from home, you don't get to really dress up. You just got to know how to write things on a computer, right? I mean,
I like you already. I'm buying what. See, look at this guy build rapport like a champion. I mean, selling ice to Eskimos, selling we say in the South, selling a ketchup popsicle to a debutante in a white glove. That's hard to do. I'm actually, I missed the beginning. I'm sorry. I'm from Arizona. You look like you're in the desert. Where are you?
I'm back in Arizona, brother. I'm in Phoenix.
Oh, where are you? I missed this. Let's get loud about the AZ. I'm from Tempe.
Okay, cool.
Clintock High School.
Cool. No, I'm not from here. I just live here.
Oh.
No, nobody. I'm from New York, man.
Yeah, no one's
I never,
from
I'll
Asia.
never, I'll never, I'll never give that up.
Oh well, you
New
live
York
there? Or
is,
you visiting? I miss you. Just passing through.
no, I'm here for a while. We'll see what happens, but I'm here currently permanently. But
You're in
yeah,
Phoenix.
I'm in
The
Phoenix, Overlook Mountain area, 7th and Bell.
so oh, you're up north. Okay, I'm Tempe boy. Um,
Yeah, it's not that far.
it depends on the traffic on I-17. You know it. Oh man. But you're out west. I used to tease there was no good reason to go west to Central Avenue. We called the box where you got to stay out about 35th. Anyway, stay out of the box. Big's a Fox Cigar Bar fan. I'll be out there for an ASC Arizona State football game in a couple weeks. And
Yeah,
there's
Mitchell is a
an
good
after
friend of mine.
party. Pardon me?
Mitchell is a good friend of mine, Mitchell Fox. Yeah.
Never met him, but he owes me something. I've spent a lot of money. Mitchell's kids, I guess Harvard, Yale, Princeton. My
Yeah,
God.
he doesn't have any kids, but yeah.
Well, anyway, love great establishment. That's my my happy place out there. Um, I'm really interested in, I guess I'm the, curmudgeon. I've been smoking for, well, since I was 15. FDA, not because of marketing to children. Um, but anyway, long time. I'm almost 40, so not yet. I'll be 39 for the next 10 years, folks.
Jeez.
But it's been a while. And I'm to the point where I guess I don't know if it's just I'm a curmudgeon and a hard ass, and I've done, gone to the festivals and read the books, and just I'm to the point where like I'm actually exasperated by that. I think there are, first of all, way too many cigar brands. If you don't own a factory, grow tobacco, process it, or something, if you're just a dude with the brand, unless you're someone, I don't know, that's an exception, like a Nick Melillo or one of those former Drew Estate guys, I will zone you out. I'm like, I really don't have interest in your brand, because to me, it's basically a scheme. What are you doing? You're just slapping your. I mean, I don't need a non. It's like liquor. If you're a non-producer or non-distiller producer, whatever, an NDP, whatever, there are a couple exceptions, but I'm probably not going to buy your overpriced shit because I know what you're doing. You're slapping your label on it, and more intermediaries, and just more intermediaries. That's economic law. So
Counselor, what's your question, counselor?
my question is, how is so I'm into that. To me, you got how is it that marketing and the storytelling and all this is so significant when I guess I don't get it. Walk me through this, please, a little further, because
Macy, let me make this.
I'm a
Macy, let me
wrapper
make this.
binder filler guy.
Let me make it
Know
simple
what
for
is
you.
it?
Let me make it simple for you, Macy. You work for your own firm, or you work for a big firm?
Myself, thank God.
You work. You
Been there,
work for
done
yourself. Okay, so you work for yourself, Macy, and that's very understandable and very respectable, and that's wonderful. If you worked for Morgan and Morgan,
that. Oh God.
if you worked for Morgan and Morgan, and they have national marketing and campaigning, how much more business would you have? Or
Actually,
wait, wait.
ton. A
Oh,
ton.
okay, so that's what it's about. That's really what it's about. The guy that could come on and explain to you about the product. If me and you meet in a cigar shop and I start talking to you, it really doesn't matter what the brand I have, as long as it's a really good brand. I can explain to you about one of them that would fit your palate and you would want to smoke it. Then what happened is the company hired the right guy because he got a cigar into your mouth, a curmudgeon like you at 39 years old, that wouldn't smoke it. What is your favorite go-tos right now?
Oh man, right now,
Straight to the point, counselor. Come on.
Espinosa Larange lines. I've been smoking a lot of. I've been smoking a lot of the Melillo Olmec Axums. I call them
The lighter.
A lot
the
of
lighter
AJ made stuff. A lot of AJ Fernandez made stuff.
You like fuller Nicaraguans, medium to
Yes,
fuller
sir.
Nicaraguans. The
Yes, sir.
Laranja might be a standout, which is a milder cigar, which I really love, especially in the Lancero size. But so it's just a matter of finding something that equates to that, or something similar that your palate would enjoy. That's all it really comes down to. And if I could explain to you about it as a representative of the company in a way that you would respect who I am and listen to me, you know, a guy like you went to law school, you practice law, You probably read a certain amount of bit more than the average guy. So, we're going to consider you a little bit above average of a consumer in outside knowledge, outside of cigars. So, you're not going to be an easy pushover to bullshit. So if I walk in there sloppy and don't know my shit, just to start telling you that this is the greatest cigar in the universe, it's probably not going to roll with you. But if I say to you, hey, man, I have this HVC cigar. It's a fantastic cigar. We make it out of a tiny, small factory in Nicaragua. It's got high primings of this and low primings of that. It's very nuanced. It's got a great Nicaraguan flavor, a ton of power, and it's got that spice that you like right down the middle of the tongue that most Nicaraguans have. What do you normally like? You like a 5-inch cigar? You like a Toro normally? You like an hour's worth of smoke? Or do you like smaller ring gauges?
I like smaller, except my wife gives me one at night, so I got to make it a Toro at night or Churchill
Okay.
to count.
So you do
She's
like a
gone right
Corona.
now. I might have a couple, I
So
love my favorite size is probably 6.5 by 48. That to me is the money.
Sure. Okay. All right. And that's the size that I kind of like, close to a Corona Gorda that they would call it. Sometimes it goes down to like 44 to 46, but yeah. So yeah, we like the similar type of flavors, and you probably like that because the flavor's a little bit more concentrated. You get a little bit more of the wrapper, and that's probably why you like those smaller ring gauges. Am I correct?
I think so. I think that, and also, I don't know. I think when you go wide, you also can you get more shit in there in terms of
Right.
sort of.
So do you think from this conversation, if the company has the right person, that it would make a difference to your purchasing?
Absolutely. I guess I misunderstood. You're talking retail guy like it. See, you're not talking some idiot on social media.
It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if I connect with you. That's all that matters, Macy. It doesn't matter where it's at. It's a matter of connection. You look at guys like Steve Saka, and he's all over social media. He connects with people. People like him or they don't like him, but they still connect with him. And it's just
That's
about
with me,
a
and I don't like. Well, I don't know. I have a love hate. I love him and hate him at the same time.
and that's and that's okay. But
I
you're going to smoke
respect
his stuff.
him.
But you buy his stuff, don't you?
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
Steve
And I
Saka
told him,
even capitalizes on your hate. He's got that pin that he gives
no,
people that
I don't
says, I
hate
hate
him.
Saka.
I
No, but
just
he's
wish
got
he
the
would have let
pin.
us go on the factory
I can't even see.
tour.
I can't even see that part of his shirt. I only see his fucked up collar. I didn't see the
I
rest
don't
of
even
the
see
shirt.
that. I only see my name.
I don't even see what's on there. What does it say?
I don't know. What does it? Oh, this is free advertising for Irotama Beach Resort, Santa Marta, Colombia.
All right.
Go there, have a great time.
That's wonderful. So it really comes down to just connecting, Macy. A lot of times, even lawyers in a courtroom, when they connect with the judge, because the judge finds them respectful, honorable, honest, he gives them a little bit more leeway.
That would
And,
explain my losing. That's a good.
that makes a lot of sense, Macy. That makes a lot of sense. But we'll fix you up next time I see you. We'll get together sometime. We'll either get together in Scottsdale or Gilbert Fox's. We'll have a cigar. Just contact me after the show. Send me a private message.
I'll say that, on your Morgan, though, I do think you get a different customer. And I think this goes back to marketing, then I'll shut up.
Sure.
One thing I like about not having advertising like Morgan is I don't work with the sort of people that hire attorneys from a TV commercial or a billboard. And you are absolutely dealing with a different consumer client. And I
Totally
think
get it.
similarly, you'd find that in tobacco. How you mark someone like you, I think is going to be, whereas I don't know. I like Drew Estate. I like Liga Privada. I hate their marketing. I'm absolutely offended. I don't like it, but I like the Liga. So anyway,
it's different images. They're going after different target markets. A lot of guys went after the guy in the suit and the tie and the pocket square, and they go after that distinguished consumer, maybe whatever that is. One of your clients probably distinguished, so on and so forth. But that's about it. So it all comes back to who they're going after. It was a pleasure to talk to you, Macy.
Hey, Casey, the one thing that wasn't brought up, and I really mean this with all the love in my heart, is the reps that don't make it, the ones that walk into a cigar shop and they sit there and they say, what are you smoking? The guy says, I'm smoking a Macanudo. He goes, oh, that's a shitty cigar.
Oh, that's a disaster.
Yeah, and we used to see that all the time. Remember,
we sure did.
3 month.
Sure did, Andy.
Yeah,
we sure did.
Yeah, and those guys, all they had to say, well, it's not my palate, but maybe you might like this, which might be in your palate,
You know what, Andy? Our palate is never the same. The
Of
cigars
course not.
the cigars that I dislike now, I loved once. Macanudo Portofino in that little tiny tube was my fishing cigar. It
Uh-huh.
was my good luck cigar. If I didn't have a Macanudo Portofino or two in my tackle box, I felt like I wasn't going to catch fish when I was in my 20s. That's how long I smoked Macanudo Portofinos. Then
Until
after
your
that,
palate changed.
a million times, Andy, a
Yeah.
million times. When I first got to Florida, Andy, the cigars that I hate, and I hate to use the word hated, but I'm not spending $20 on a cigar that I dislike. And I got
Mhm.
to Florida, and after smoking for about a handful of months, I was really into Connecticut's. For 2.5, 3 years, all I was smoking was mild to mid-body Connecticut's. I love the High Clare Castle. I love Perdomo's 30th anniversary that just came out. I love the Damaso. I love all these Connecticut's. I love a lot of AJ's Connecticut's. And I was, before that, a dark leaf, broadleaf smoker. Now I'm back to dark leaf and broadleaves. Your palate's always changing. The climate affects too. Where you smoke will affect what you taste too. A humid
Mhm.
environment, I was tasting completely different stuff out of a cigar than a dry environment. So it's
Elevation as well. Elevation will make a
elevation,
big difference.
hydration of your system, food in your system. Everything affects your experience, man.
Mhm.
What
You
happened to our
know,
host?
he's here with us, just to bring in a memory for you. One of the best days, one nights I ever had, my relationship with Alan Rubin for years and years and years. We were at the Palms Hotel and we had the VIP ticket and we went up to the penthouse and they had the fresh sushi bar and the fresh meat bar and all that stuff. And then you went down in the swimming pool and everyone got pissed off because we were all able to get up into the VIP section with the all the cabanas and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
good times.
And I just recently smoked the Wonka bar pack that I had from that event.
Those must have been nicely aged.
They were,
10
they
years.
were. And, I mean, good times, good stuff. But the one thing that a lot of owners screw up on, a lot of the owners don't realize that, especially if you've got a rep that's been around for multiple years, the face of the rep is more of a face of the cigar than the face of the owner. And they don't
It's
realize that.
complicated. It's complicated. And that's why they don't realize that hiring a guy that's a green pea, that's very raw and very green to represent a brand can be devastating in a territory if you hire the wrong guy. It really can be. And that's just the way it works, you know?
Mm-hmm. But it really is. I was talking with Nick Perdomo. This is several years ago. And it was after, God, all of a sudden, I can't remember his name. His old rep that he had in California for
Chuck,
20 years. Chuck. Yeah, Chuck
my, my
Placido.
Chuck was one of the reasons why I got into the cigar business.
Yeah,
There was
Chuck was
there was
great.
there was three guys: Chuck, Jonathan Lipson at Alec Bradley, and Jonathan Carney at La Flor Dominicana. Those guys I really looked up to, and I said, you know what? I want to do that. I want those guys. I like those guys. Those guys, they enjoy what they do. They're good at it, and that's what I want to emulate. And Chuck was amazing.
Yeah, and when Chuck left, so did Perdomo in California. And,
Unfortunately, yeah.
and Nick says to me, screw California, man. They just start buying all my cigars. And I kept trying to tell him, it was when Chuck left because everyone knew Chuck. We had the same thing when I left Christoph.
That
They
wasn't
lost a
that
lot of
wasn't
their
Andy.
business.
That wasn't their big problem. Their big problem wasn't that just Chuck left. Their problem was Chuck was Mr. Perdomo in that territory.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they went to a broker after that. And a broker has 5, 6 brands. He can't be Mr. Anything. So
No.
it
And
changes
he's
the
going to sell
dynamic.
where he makes the most money.
It changes the dynamic of what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. And we see that in a lot of brands. So the thing is that most people don't realize this, and you said it, you made mention of it, it's all a personal thing. If you get along with the people, you get along with the reps get along. Our job was not to sell cigars to the stores. It was to help the stores to sell cigars. And I really like the fact that you were sitting there emptying ashtrays and going into the humidor, because they may not have carried a brand that I had, but I would go into the humidor and I would help them pick out cigars. And I might say, well, look, if you're picking up 4, if you pick up a 5th, I'll give you one of ours to try. You know, of course, always asking the owner if it was okay with him, but helping them to increase their sales. And that's a big plus for reps.
You know, and market penetration, you know, to me, market penetration was very important. When I left California, Arizona, Nevada as a territory manager with Alec Bradley, I probably had anywhere between 80 to 85% market penetration. It was hard to go into a store and not find a nice selection of Alec Bradley. And that's just the way it was. That was, you know, that was important to me as a person. It wasn't the number that I sold, the volume. It was how many stores I wanted to be in. I knew that no matter what, at the end of the day, I would make a living if I was in a lot of stores and built the brand. And then when I went to a cigar store, they didn't want to carry the brand. I go, no problem, man. It might not work for your store, but I'll be back to see you in about a year when everybody in your town carries the brand other than you. And then we'll talk and see if it still sits this way. And I would go back and they would have a significant amount of people saying that they buy Alec Bradley. Do you carry Alec Bradley? And it changed. And you changed the market, you know, no matter what. It's the ground forces. Please go ahead.
Allow me a brief sort of follow-up question, or to step in here for a moment.
Sure.
Because something you just made me think about. Before we spoke about the Pareto law of, you know, like 20% of the retailers probably being at the top of their game, and then you have a large chunk of retailers who probably won't move the needle as much. And you just spoke about market penetration and how you try to get into as many humidors as possible. Do you think it can be detrimental to a brand as well to be in certain stores where you feel the product is probably not taken care of in the same way as in my 20%?
Depends on the brand. It depends on the brand. If it's a big national brand like Alec Bradley or any of the big brands, Perdomo, Alec Bradley, Rocky Patel, you're going to be in a lot of stores. People are going to come in and buy the product off the shelf without you working. I used to tell retailers all the time that if you took Padron and put it on the bottom shelf in the back of the store or the top shelf in the front of the store, your sales are not going to really change. 95% of everybody buying a Padron is coming into the store to buy a Padron. They, in their mind, know, yeah, I'm in the mood for a 64. I don't know what size I want yet, but I'm in the mood for a 64. I'm in the mood for a 26. I'm in the mood for an Opus. And as we're driving to the store, so those brands don't necessarily need the best place. Now, when you have small boutique brands, if you're in the wrong stores, it's the death of the brand. Couple of reasons. The people in the store, and when I say people, the clerks, the manager, the owner have to like the brand. If they don't like the brand is not going to be recommended. If the brand is not going to be recommended, the brand is going to sit on the shelf. If the brand is going to sit on the shelf, you're not getting reorders. So it's very important to have a relationship and find cigars that they will like. Look, the problem with most people, and you hear, I hate this brand. That is the most ridiculous thing to say, period. There has to be a cigar in that lineup that you will like. The problem is I didn't match you up with the right cigar. When I walk into a cigar before I give an owner a cigar, what do you love? What do you like? Asking all the questions. I'm not giving you a cigar until I understand 99% you're probably going to love this cigar. Because it's a mistake. You know, you take an 80-year-old guy and you stick him in a 2-car Miata, he's going to hate his life. You stick him in a 4-door Cadillac with all the bells and whistles, he's going to be comfortable, love life. You got to put the right person with the right product or immediately you lose. Remember when we went back to earlier, it's the same thing. How many consumers do we lose every day rather than gain? It's the same thing with retailers. If I walk into you as a retailer and I don't give you the proper respect and understanding your needs, I don't understand your staff, I don't get everybody smoking what they love, there is a type of cigar that everybody loves. And most manufacturers have something in their lineup. They all will do. we give up too early. You know, oh, I hate Alec Bradley. What'd you smoke? Oh, I don't remember. How many did you try? I tried one of their cigars and I hated it. You know, could have been the wrong size, could have been the wrong thing, could have been anything. But that first touch is so important. And the same thing with the first consumer when they walk into the store, getting them the right cigar where they sit there and go, this was a great experience. I want to come back tomorrow. And you get those all the time if you give them the right experience.
One thing that I wanted to go back to, partly what you were discussing with Macy earlier, is it almost feels like there's so many great cigars out there today. There's fantastic manufacturers, a boatload of different brands that do a great job. And you mentioned earlier that it's less about the quality of the product itself. Like, do you feel that it's mostly predatory competition, and at the end of the day, what really makes the difference is the guy standing in front of you?
Reinhard, I want to go back about the quality issue, because the quality issue is complicated. When I say the quality doesn't matter anymore, it's not that the quality doesn't matter. It's everybody's making good cigars.
That's the point. It should be a
I
given.
see these guys online complaining all the time of how a cigar tunneled or how something happened with their cigar. I smoke 3 to 5 cigars a day from multiple manufacturers. I try not to repeat the same cigar in a period of time because I like to taste a lot of different stuff, just like with my scotches and bourbons. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of my scotch or bourbon bar. I have about 150 different scotches and bourbons. Not better or worse, just different. So when I say that the quality does, it's not that the quality doesn't matter. We've reached the apex of quality. The quality of cigars, the fermentation, the everything is such a high quality that it's very hard to have a bad experience. Most of the time, it's the consumer. Either the cigar was dry at the cigar shop that they bought it, or it was overly wet, or their humidor is overly wet or overly dry, or they left it out, or they cut it wrong and had the freaking thing all unravel, or they burnt the shit out of it when they were lighting it, left the center not burnt, or overcooked the center, and now it's tunneling because you created your own tunnel, or you're sitting under a fan and it's beating the shit out of your cigar. All these things are not taken into an equation. They're not taken into equation. It's always the cigar. It could never be my fault because I'm an expert cigar smoker. So if you have a great quality product coming out, you know, it's hard to differentiate other than the people representing the brands and the people driving the brands and the people living the life of the brand. It's one thing to sell a product. It's another thing to live the life of a brand. To me, a cigar is not about the cigar. It's about the experience. What meal did I just have? What drink did I just have with it? What drink am I pairing it with? Do you know how much time it takes me to figure out what scotch or bourbon I'm going to have with a cigar, or what cigar I'm going to have with a scotch or bourbon? I can go on for 30, 40 minutes going, why? Because I'm always looking for something spectacular in an experience. It's not a habit to me. It's an experience. I just had a 30-day aged prime ribeye. It was spectacular. I had it with a glass of 14-year-old Caribbean cask scotch from Balvenie, which is really nice, and a little bit of that rum finish really cuts the fat on the steak, so it pairs really well with a steak. What do I get after that that will elevate the experience to the next level rather than drop the experience down? I need the right cigar. I'm probably going to get some. Yeah, Macy, you're not getting a lot of sex, so I understand that. I'm probably going to pick out something. I'm probably going to pick out something that is a darker leaf, like this. My Father, La Bijou, in a box press format, perfect for after a steak. Now, what do I match with this? Probably a nice sherry cask. You know, I have a bottle of Alexander Murray. It was distilled in 1988, Bunnahabhain cask strength. It's a 28-year-old scotch. It's probably going to go fantastic with this and elevate my experience. So to me, it's about experiences. I don't really care what happened yesterday, and I'm really not too worried about tomorrow. I am all about the moment. and enjoying this experience. And that's really the most important thing to me right now in life as a whole, with everything. It's all about the experience. I don't consume anything just to consume. I don't care what it is. And, I could eat at a taco stand in Tijuana for $1 tacos, and I could eat a filet mignon with foie gras and truffles on it, and it could be just a good of experience for me. So it's about the experience. It's about that moment in time. We can't repeat these experiences, and they have us so trained to worry so much about life. Fuck all that. Yesterday's gone. You can't sell those airplane tickets anymore. The planes are all gone. And tomorrow, I'm not really too worried about right now because they're not even fueling those planes yet. So I want to worry about today's airline tickets and selling the flights today. I want to worry about the moment. I want to worry about the experience. And that to me is the most important thing.
Amen.
Well, Jose Blanco used to say the only thing that could ruin a good cigar is an asshole.
Sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And Casey, just a side comment, when it comes to the difficulty in picking your cigar or your drink, I always catch myself that when I want to go and smoke a cigar at the club in the city center, I spend 30 minutes in front of my humidor picking a whole array of cigars, and then I stick about 10 or 15 cigars in my travel case, and then at the club I spend another 15 minutes trying to figure out which one of those 15 I'm gonna smoke now.
I brought seven different cigars out here, from the humidor to out here, because I couldn't decide what I was in the mood for at that moment. I'm like, I'll figure it out in a minute, but I couldn't figure it. And I have a photographic memory when it comes to flavors and profiles and what I taste. So to me I'm not in the mood for that. I'm in the mood for that. I'm not in the mood for that. And that's where it comes down to. It's not really like anything else.
I'm so with you. I found the soulmate in that. I'm glad.
Yeah, and a lot of people keep a book, and a book is wonderful. I've never kept a book because it's all right here. I remember the flavors. I remember the profile. I remember what it tastes like. I'm not really in the mood for that type of strength right now. I want something milder.
I always speak about the sensory database that we build in our heads. And it's not just about memorizing specific cigars and what they taste like, but it's also to just build that fundamental database of certain aromatic notes and taste profiles, which you can sort of store and then go back to whenever you explore something new. And I think that's a fundamental part of exploring the product and trying to get acquainted with it.
And then same thing comes with alcohol. I'm a nut when it comes to certain things. I dive really deep. Whatever the subject matter, I dive really deep. In 2016, yeah. In 2016, I came home one day from a road trip, and I had a handful of cigars. And I'm like, you know what? I am done. I am done chasing exotic cigars. I am done chasing the last limited cigar. I'm done chasing all these things. 5 minutes later, I'm sitting on Facebook. A group pops up, Bourbon and Scotch Enthusiasts. At the time, I was really into Scotch, not really a lot of bourbon, just a little bit. Blanton's, Eagle Rare. Oh, this sounds like a fun idea. Well, that fun idea, now I have 150 bottles in my bar. So, it's one of those things where, hey, Steve Toth, what's up, buddy boy?
I got to tap out soon. Big question for you, Casey. What's next for you in the cigar industry?
I got to be honest with you. I don't really know. There is a massive shift right now in the industry. For the past 4 years, sales have been astronomical from COVID, and that is starting to slow down. And the consumer that was the COVID consumer has slowed down buying. So now there is starting to be a massive turnover in the industry once again, which for the past 4 years, they've been worried about manufacturing over sales. And now sales is definitely going to take a place. My ideal situation would be a national sales manager position where I could lift up a brand and take it to the next level and lift up their sales force and marketing and really carry a brand. For the first time in my life, I really don't know if I am, what's the word? I'm not in a desperation mode because I don't need to currently work, but it's already happening, Albert. But there is something inside of me that is kind of dying by not being on the road. You can only have so many massages. You can only have so many facials. You can only swim in the pool so many days. Your tank can only get so dark. You can only eat so much good food and not do absolutely nothing. And I've been kind of like in a 3-month vacation mode. And yes, hunters need to hunt. Yeah. I miss the road. I miss the consumers. I really miss the consumers.
What
I
brand
miss,
would you work for?
it's not about a brand. It's more about a philosophy and cigars that I would really enjoy smoking. You know, there has to be somebody out there that's looking for a professional that wants somebody that is a turnkey professional that wants to bring somebody in that could hire, train, motivate a sales force, get their cigars sold, and not be a pain in their ass and be an asset rather than a liability. There's not a lot of us out there that are that good. That's the reality of life, the 20/80 rule. And guys that could train salespeople even are less. So I'm sure, things will start to happen. It's just a matter of getting it out there that I'm looking to get back into the industry. I have no idea which direction, though.
Well, I'm
And
sure
You know,
wherever
I've
you
been
go,
retired for 5 years and I still miss being on the road.
yeah, I love the road. I always love the road. I always love being on the road. Yeah, I can't do that, Macy. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sure
Uh,
wherever you go, you'll be a great asset because I know
thank
you
you.
for a
Thank you,
few
Steve.
years now, and you're always a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to see you, brother. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, yeah. Every day's a good day. Thank you.
Good, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll see you guys. Thank you, Ryan.
Bye bye.
Steve, many
Tap out.
thanks for chiming in and thanks for the thoughtful question. Much appreciated. Well, Casey, just one question in regards to the consumer, and you mentioned challenging consumers and those typical Mr. Know-it-alls, where the cigar is probably falling apart in front of them because of how they treated it, but yet, of course, it's the manufacturer's fault or the retailer's fault. You're excellent in addressing other people, and a sales pitch doesn't necessarily have to be a sales pitch, but it's also about how do you treat challenging customers. How do you go about that? And I would assume part of that is your loving and caring attitude for other people and all their flaws and whatever comes with it. But man, how do you, what's the best advice you could give another salesperson or a retailer as to how to handle that one guy who knows everything and no matter what's going wrong, it's certainly not his fault?
You know, it's, I was told at a very young age that you could say anything to anybody as long as you know how to say it. And it brings me back. It's funny, as you were talking and asking me that question, it reminded me of a story that happened to me at a very young age. I was selling steak, chicken, and seafood door to door at the age of 26, 27 years old. And this lady with a very robust figure came to the door. And I immediately on the inside got happy because I knew she was a steak eater. And I looked at her and I smiled. I go, "Hi, ma'am. How you doing? I deliver steak, chicken, and seafood to some of your neighbors. I work for Omni Distributing. We've been delivering food out here for a very long time. And do you love steak, chicken, or seafood?" She goes, "No, I don't eat any of that." I go, "Come on, ma'am," as I touch her on the shoulder. "You didn't get that beautiful figure by eating celery." And she looked at me and laughed. And for a second, she thought she was insulted, but then she laughed and goes, "Let me see what you have." So it really comes down to how you say things to people. Is it out of love? Is it out of compassion? Is it out of empathy? Or are you being a dickhead and talking down to them? And I don't know. I've always found it, I grew up in a very interesting household from a very young age. My dad had all kinds of friends from political backgrounds to religions, and they would all sit around and debate different topics. And I was always sitting in the room. I was my dad's oldest son. I was the oldest grandchild in the family. So I was given a little bit different type of access than most children would be. So at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would be sitting in a room and these guys would be debating and I would listen. And none of them hated each other during the debate. It got passionate and heated sometimes, but there was no hate. It was my idea, and I want to express to you my idea in a logical, factual, diplomatic way, and see if my idea is better than your idea. And I think that is an art form that has died. And you can see it on the internet. People are screaming at each other, hating on each other. There's no reason to try to win you over with facts or debate or logic. And I think that really has to do with how do you turn a guy that comes in that's, say, a trouble customer, is by a little bit of empathy, compassion, and explaining the right way to do things. You know, when I say, have you ever cut a cigar before? And they go, oh, yeah. I go, would you like me to cut this one for you to show you how I cut cigars? Oh, yeah. Let me show you something. Well, on these cigars, there's 3 lines, and those are the cap lines. So what happens is the guy that's rolling the cigar, he takes the bunch, which is the 3 leaves in the middle usually, and then he puts the binder on it in one direction, then he puts the wrapper on it in the other direction, then he puts 1 cap, 2 caps, 3 caps. And if you cut too deep on the caps, the whole cigar unravels. So you want to cut up here. And when I explain it in that way, no matter how deep they cut or how shallow they cut, they took something from it that was positive, and not somebody that was talking down from them, because I was talking about how I do it, why I do it. So it really, and every one of those things, you know, a lot of times cigar canoeing is 90% a consumer problem. Other than if the Ligero is put in the wrong spot of the cigar, you know, that happens. But 90% is humidity, it's lighting it wrong, it's being in the wrong environment, it's windy, it's something that's causing that cigar to act wild outside of the general practice. So really, that's really it, Reinhard.
Speaking about raising a point of criticism in a respectful way, and something we haven't really tackled, but I want to dive into a little bit with you, is cigar media. And also when you talk about a cigar not performing, there's plenty of people out there nowadays, given that social media provides everybody with a voice, and everybody has become its own media outlet. There's plenty of stuff out there that you can find where people express very strong opinions, and that can probably have an impact on how well a brand is performing. What's, in your opinion, the current state of cigar media in general? And we spoke about cigar brands, retailers all having to be better at what they're doing. And I would strongly argue the very same is true for cigar media. And again, we look at a lot of hobbyists, passionate as they are, 100%. But what is your take on the current state of cigar media?
Complicated. Before I got into the cigar business, and I won't talk about where I used to do some reviews. Okay? And there were lifestyle reviews. And the review was always, I ate this, I drank this, I smoked this. This was the experience I had. And I did one review a week, but I smoked 5 cigars a day. So that's 35 cigars a week. One day I got a private message from Carlito Puente right before I got in the business. Carlito says, let me ask you a question. Just out of curiosity, do you ever smoke a bad cigar? I go, why? He goes, because I happen to catch your reviews and I never see you say anything negative about anybody. I go, that's funny you say that. I go, I am an experienced smoker, not an experienced smoker, but an experienced smoker. To me, it's an experience. I'm having 35 experiences a week. Which one of them you want me to talk about? The best one or the worst one? So I am a really heavy glass half full guy. I get up in the morning with a smile on my face. I go to sleep usually with a smile on my face. It just depends what you want to focus on. There's a lot of good media guys. I love the news cycle on Half Wheel. I think they are the best at news. Do I necessarily always love their reviews of cigars? Maybe not, but that's what they do. That's their shtick. It's part entertainment, part review. What I found out very early on in cigars is to find people that match my palate or my level of experience, not my experience in level, but that I want to have an experience rather than just smoke a cigar. And I found guys on social media that don't do reviews, but they like certain cigars. So whenever they smoke something, I'm like, is this like this? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I want to go try that. So I found those guys that fit me, you know. We all have different levels. We all have different palates. A guy that loves Connecticut's probably shouldn't follow a guy that loves broadleafs, because he's the guy that loves broadleaf probably not going to like Connecticut's. One of the most misunderstood people in the industry is cigar aficionado, because nobody really understands their rating system and how they get ratings. I was fortunate enough over multiple years to spend time with those guys, especially the guys that rate the cigars. And the most misunderstood thing we have as an industry is understanding the broad consumer base. Out of the 10 guys in Cigar Aficionado that rate cigars, and why the cigars, specific cigars, get ratings the way they do, is how the team is split up. You have 3 guys that love full-bodied cigars. You have 3 guys that like mild cigars. You have 4 guys that like medium-bodied cigars. So which cigars do you think overall will end up being Cigar of the Year? Which one?
When it pays the most advertising.
No, absolutely not. The mild cigars and the full-body cigars always wash each other's scores out. So the medium-body cigars always win. And not only do the medium cigars always win, it's always cigars with a similar profile because the same people are reviewing them. If you look at the Prensado, if you look at the Andalusian Bull, if you look at Eye of the Shark, other than this La Bijou, which is way outside of out of their norm, and the Casa Magna when it won, which was way outside of their norm, most of the cigars they have are easy to smoke, nice, creamy, medium body cigars. That's what wins, because that is where the core of their review team scores cigars. We tend to always believe that it's sometimes outside of the peripheral without really understanding the knowledge. That's what Cigar Aficionado is. There's 10 reviewers. The bulk of their reviewers are medium body lovers, and those guys, usually that's where the points sit. That's just the way it is. So back to the original question of what do I think of cigar media? I think there's definitely a place for it. I wish that some of them were more knowledgeable, that they wouldn't give out false information, especially to new smokers, because cigar media is used by new smokers more than anybody else. I would probably prevail. I see a lot of misinformation. I see a lot of guys that really don't understand fermentation, aging, what causes mold on a cigar, humidity levels, proper storage, all this basic stuff. Even dry boxing, which is, you don't even hear enough about dry boxing and how important it is to a cigar, because most of the cigars that we smoke have a thicker leaf and need to come down to 65 to 62% humidity rather than the 72 that you want to use for long-term aging, because long-term aging, you want to keep more essential oils in the cigar. So the higher the humidity level, the better the essential oils are going to stay in the cigar and not dissipate. There's also a lot of other things. Nobody talks about the fact that most cigars are over-fermented these days, and there's not a lot of oily cigars. This La Bijou has oil, but you look at a lot of cigars, they don't have that sheen that we had in the cigar boom, because it was less fermentation, so they had more oil. There's a lot of differences that just get passed over. A lot of cigar media do a good job. There's a lot of them that I really like. And that's about it.
One thing that I would love to see, and goes back to your comment about half wheel. I think what the guys do extremely well is write proper editorial pieces that are not just copy pasting a press
They're
release
great writers.
you
They're
already
really
saw
great
on
writers.
27 other different platforms, or have very strongly opinionated reviews, which you probably wouldn't consider journalism in the truest sense, anyways, right? So I think the cigar industry could really benefit from thoroughly researched, properly put together editorial pieces with depth and substance. And maybe it's a it's part of the times that we live in, where attention span has gotten quite short. Um, so people don't want to consume long format editorial pieces. But I would argue if it's done properly, then there's certainly an audience for that.
Their stories to me are always intriguing when they talk about the FDA, when they talk about what they think is going to happen, when they talk about their guesses. They're very educated guys. Um, they write very good editorial stories. They write about the industry in a very well mannered way. Um, when it comes to journalism, exceptional in that format. I think they should hire a handful of guys to do some of the reviews that are outside of their current block. It might make the format more interesting. But they're as good as they get when it comes to the what's happening, what's really happening in the world, what's happening in news, what's happening with this manufacturer. They're very thorough. They have a good team. I like their team. A lot of times when I read about their analysis of FDA or laws or things happening, they're on the money when they talk about PCA, when they talk about other things. They're really on the money. I give them a lot of credit, and I always write that you guys did a great job on this story, and that's their strong point. And I think the other part, the reviews, maybe that's their wrestling, their WWE to add to their strong point, where it brings other people in.
Honestly, I believe that reviews in general are a very difficult subject when it comes to how the industry is functioning these days. There's so many reviews out there, and I mean, God bless them all, right? And I appreciate everybody sitting in front of a keyboard, putting down a written review, or sitting in front of a camera and trying his or her very best to share with the world what they're experiencing. But as you said, it's challenging to sort of, you know, paddle through a lot of misinformation sometimes. And at the end of the day, it's a guy or a lady sitting and smoking a cigar, and you have to ask yourself what's in it in terms of value for the reader or for the viewer. And that's probably where some of the platforms fall a bit short in terms of their depth and substance, and maybe even the sincerity or authenticity, back to the point that you made earlier.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of great guys in this industry. They love what they do. They're passionate, so on and so forth. And there's also a lot of filler. There definitely is a lot of filler. Um, One of my friends when I first got in the industry was Delicia, the cigar vixen.
Mhm.
Have you ever met Delicia?
No, unfortunately not.
Delicia is from California. She's come to a lot of my events. We spent a lot of time talking, her and her husband, and especially about cigars and alcohol. Um, Delicia is a brilliant, brilliant palate. Very well spoken, really knows cigars, and at the same time is a beautiful woman. So making sure that when you talk to her, that you see the brilliance and not just a beautiful woman. Um, Sometimes you have separation for a lot of guys. So I really respected Delicia. We talked a lot about cigars. We did some reviews together. It was fun, fun, fun environment. We did a lot of events together. Um, yes, Delicia, yeah. And she's been around the industry a long time. And then you have some people in the industry that are attractive women, but don't really have a palate, don't know how to light a cigar, don't know how to do anything. In fact, one person I sent a private message to one day, and I tried to explain how to light a cigar because she was torching the shit out of her cigars live while telling everybody she was an expert, and she got offended. And I was done. I was like, you know what? That's okay. You do your thing. You know, if you don't understand that if you're using a 4-torch flame like that to hold it away from the cigar and bring in the flame rather than torching the outside of the band, it's ridiculous. You know, that's just the reality of life. You know, there's people that are educated and have other attributes, and there's people that are just have other attributes. That the cigar industry has embraced too. They like hot looking women. So it doesn't matter, I guess, what they know and what they don't know. And then you have, you know, people that have done really well in the industry that were very knowledgeable. One person comes to mind is Nicole that works for Harem and Solomon. Very attractive woman, knows her stuff, has her own cigar lounge now in Galveston. Comes from a cigar family. Her dad owned a cigar store, and an attractive woman at the same time. The other one that was a cigar rep that's, you know, very attractive and knows her stuff in Florida. I forget her name right now. She left the industry for other reasons. She wanted to own a farm and stuff like that. But, you know, there is a difference between knowing stuff and showing it. You know, you have to have a little bit of both if you really want to be taken seriously. You know?
Excellent point.
Yeah. I like people that are elegant. You know, if you dress elegantly and you represent something, it really adds to it because you're showing respect for what you're doing. You know, you put on a sports coat, I put on a long sleeve shirt. You know, it's 100 degrees right here. Actually, we have a cool day today. We got lucky. It's usually been 115, 112 the last, you know, it's 100 degrees, but I'm still wearing a long sleeve shirt. I'm doing a live show. I got to show some kind of respect to the industry that I represent, to the person who I am. And yeah, Laura Tilley's a good person. So that's important. You know, there's a lot of slobbery that has come about the last handful of years of people that just don't care. And I got to tell you, what you represent and what you show to other people is that you don't care too. You know, if you show up to pajamas to something, people see that you show up to pajamas. That's your level. You know, first glance is everything.
Couldn't agree more. Casey, I'm so grateful because you're so generous with your time and everything that you share with us. I would like to address one last point, and you sort of made a side comment about it a bit earlier, and that's the state of the industry in general, and that you see a market correction already happening at the moment. What are your thoughts about where the industry is headed, and do you take the over under when you know we see that the import numbers into the US are still strong, but I hear a lot of cautious comments from many of the retailers
Let's
regarding
let's
sales.
let's talk dynamics, Reinhard. Let's talk dynamics so we can understand the story. Because without the math, you don't understand it, right? Neither do I, nor can we explain it. When we had a cigar boom in the 90s, it was an organic cigar boom that more people started smoking cigars. What happened during COVID was a little bit different. We had a little bit of more people smoking cigars, but the majority of it was people that smoked cigars, smoked more cigars, and their habits changed. So that consumer base that their habits changed skyrocketed the numbers because the guy that was smoking one cigar a week is smoking one cigar a day. So you went from 4 cigar sales to 30 cigar sales in the same period of time for the same consumer. The consumer that was smoking one cigar a day went to 3, 4 cigars a day. So you can see the numbers there. The guy that was smoking 2 a day went to 4 to 5 a day. So the numbers escalated out of the same consumer base mostly. We got some new consumers, a lot of young people, which is wonderful. But the majority was Joe already smokes, Joe's smoking more. The import numbers are also another interesting number because what happened in Central America for the last, and the Dominican, more Central America, What happened in Central America for the past 4 years is the rollers are leaving. I don't know if you know about this. Okay. So a lot of the rollers, because they have the most income, are the ones that are able to migrate for better situations. So what was called seasonal rollers, which were people that would move around from factory to factory depending on demand, now the factories don't let go of them at all. And they will steal them from other factories. So those rollers are not being let go or slowed down. So production is at an all-time high. There's one problem. Consumption is starting to decrease. Consumption is starting to decrease. I see numbers from manufacturers that have to publicly produce those numbers, like STG, and I see the numbers. And then, that's a publicly traded company, so they have to produce, what's up, what's down, so on and so forth. I know for a fact, from the amount of reps that are being seen in the stores, from the amount of specials going on, and from the amount of sales and the numbers, that there is a slide. There is definitely a slide. When it comes to prices going up, just so you guys understand as a consumer base, the cost of tobacco growing has gone up. The cost of fertilizer has gone up. The cost of labor has gone up. The cost of the bands has gone up. The cost of the ink for the bands has gone up. The cost of the paper has gone up. The cost of the wood has gone up. The cost of the clasps has gone up. The cost of importing into the United States has gone up. There is a cost increase across the board everywhere. Just like you see in everything you purchase on a daily basis, guys. There is nothing these manufacturers can do other than reducing costs. And if you guys want to go to bundled cigars over a box cigar, well, that could be a decrease in cost, but most consumers want a nice box. Most consumers want a band. Most consumers want the ribbon in the box so they can pull out the center cigar. Those are things that we request. There was a guy yesterday talking about overpackaging, that everything is overpackaged in the cigar industry. Well, he's a retailer. So he hates opening the outside box and the paper and the inside box and the paper. But let me tell you something. The consumer that buys a $200 or $250 box and is celebrating something or is giving it as a gift wants all that. That is part of our sale to them, that this comes nicely packaged. It has beautiful bands. It has cellophane. It has all this stuff. These are part of the selling points that we sell to the consumer. So there's a huge divide between retailer and consumer on mentality, for sure. The retailer always wants the smallest box that perfectly sits on the shelf. The consumer wants always the biggest box that's fancy for the same price. And there's a massive disconnect between the two, for sure. In the next 12 months, we're going to see a lot of small retailers probably go out of business, especially the hobbyists. Consumers will start to get even more savvy than they are already. Manufacturing of small brands, a lot of them are going to get hurt, especially the ones that are still pulling a half hobbyist role. There's a lot of little brands that popped up in the past 4 years. And those small brands always cost more than the bigger brands because of costs associated. A lot of them are going to be hurt. And we're not talking about foundation size or Saka size or LFD size or Roma Craft size. We're talking about the little guys. HVC is on the cusp of breaking through from being a small to a little bit bigger. That guy has some great cigars. You smoke his cigars, HVC?
Absolutely. Renier is a great guy.
I really like Illusion. They're a border brand between being able to blow up to the next size. Illusion also has that type of thing where one of the greatest cigars ever made, in my opinion. I consider Illusion like a Nicaraguan version of Davidoff because of the nuances and flavors that he could pull out, out of an Epernay or out of a Holy Lance, that you're like, wow, this is Nicaraguan, but the nuances are extraordinary. Not a lot of guys can pull that out. So I think there's definitely going to be a shift in the marketplace. We'll see what the big guys do. The big guys are going to get, of course, hurt more than anybody else. When SDG loses 10% compared to Illusion losing 10%, it's a much bigger animal. I watched the past 12 months retail sales start to shrink to about 10 to 12% from my last year, even though I'm doing the same thing and having the same amount of people walking into the stores.
But do you think a lot of that has to do with online shopping?
No, because the numbers that are shrinking are across the board. Those online consumers are still buying retail, and most of the guys that come into the stores will tell you, "No, I'm a retail guy. I don't really shop online." Andy, there's something that you got to understand too. There's a lot of online consumers. There's still a lot of retail consumers that don't like online. They don't like to go online. They know a lot of the online places are not necessarily great in what the product that is delivered to the consumer that is sitting in a warehouse. It's under humidified. There's some really great online places. I'll tell you what, Smoking Cigars has a great online presence. They have a humidified warehouse. The product is shipped out quickly. Nothing is sitting back ordered usually. And it's managed like a mom and pop store, even though it's a massive online presence. So I think more consumers are shifting to those type of online guys that have a retail presence also, because it's a little bit of both. Yes, absolutely, Brian.
Excellent.
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for your thoughts and for your insights that you shared with us. Man, it's been such a privilege and pleasure to have you on the show.
What? Let me ask you a couple questions now.
With pleasure.
So this year they moved the PCA to the spring in Vegas, which I have been saying for 10 years that is the most important thing for the PCA to do. Because the winter guys are coming out of their winter. The guys in Florida are buying for their season still. The guys in the winter states are buying for their summer coming up. It usually takes a month to 2 months to ship anyway. What do you think of that?
I honestly think that this year is a bit challenging for everybody just because we're in that transition period and everybody has to adjust to a new schedule. So it was probably a bit of a stretch for some of the manufacturers to get the new releases ready in time for the trade show. Plus, the retailers had to adjust in their sales cycles and how they address their purchasing behavior linked to the season we're in and where the trade show falls. Ultimately, I'm with you. I believe that long term, it's the right move and it'll benefit everybody. And I'm curious as to how next year is going to run. But in the end, I believe it was the right thing to do, and it will be beneficial for the industry as a whole.
Okay, and
Especially
so for
for the
both
international
of
market.
you, what do you think about them going back to New Orleans for 2 years?
Disaster. And only because, not because of the city, because of what it offers. There's no central hotel. There's no central gathering place. There's no place to do business like we do in Vegas. There's no 24-hour access. There's no smoking in the city of New Orleans. It's a very complicated place to have an event like that. It would be like, I don't know, going to Utah to have a sex conference. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Their smoking
Reinhard,
rules for this year too are terrible. You can only smoke in a booth that gives you a cigar. You can't smoke on the floor in general.
yeah, it's just ridiculous. Those type of things are poorly thought out. We're going for smoking. You know what I mean? It would be, we are going for smoking. It's a smoking conference. We sell cigars. How would you go to a place that's not smoker friendly? They make decisions that are poorly wrapped around poor decisions because it's by committee, and committee is not leadership. Always they hate, some countries hate dictators, and dictators are horrible for a lot of places, but dictators work in certain situations too, especially when it comes to the growth of an industry. You got to make solid movements And that's really what it is. You know, Reinhard, did he disappear on us?
No, not at
I
all.
miss her.
Ah, what brands do you see, either newer, smaller, medium sized, that are doing everything right?
And keep Jeremiah out of the fold.
What a
Who's
question.
Jeremiah?
What a question.
Miracle.
Excellent question, Casey.
I like Jeremiah.
Bullseye question.
I wish they'd give me the U.S. sales of that company. Boy, would that be something wonderful. But what companies do you see doing everything right? Oh, you run European sales for him, don't you? Where do you go?
He's here. He's thinking about it. He's
I
thinking
didn't
about
go
it.
anywhere, man. I'm just having a hard time thinking about, all
Are you-
across the board.
Are you running sales for him somewhere?
Well, technically, yeah, I'm the vice
Yeah.
president. Or
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I take care of that.
Yes, I could have swore I remembered you, or man, I tell you, my memory's so great on cigars, and then on other stuff, it's not so great. But we can talk later.
I like to keep that part out of the show.
Right. I respect that. I respect that.
for obvious reasons, and just to be
Sure.
respectful to
Sure.
everybody.
But other than Marifol, what do you see guys that are doing everything right?
Look, I have a hard time thinking about brands that do everything consistently all across the board, where the way the sales are run, the marketing and the product all fall into place. And I could name a couple of cigars where I really like the product. I probably don't necessarily like the marketing, similar to what Macy said earlier about certain cigars that he likes. I think that, to pick some examples, Nick Melillo has wonderful product to offer. He does an excellent job in doing a deep dive into the substance of the story behind the cigar. So you really feel like you're not just smoking dried leaf, but you're smoking the entire story, and you have the whole experience that comes with it. I think that Steve Saka, being and a very opinionated guy who likes to see his face all over social media, and he likes to hear himself talk, has really carved out a very interesting place for himself in the industry, getting a lot of recognition and a lot of attention, and it seems that his product is doing extremely well, especially in the US. I very much like John Huber's stuff, and I've been a Crowned Heads fan for a long time. So those are a couple that I really enjoy. I'm completely with you on the Epernay. I love some of Dion's blends. However, I'm not so sure about the whole rebranding they did, and whether that really sticks or has been successful in the market. So you see, there's different elements in all of these brands where I feel like this part of the equation is a hit, but maybe not so sure about the overall package.
So to me, when I talk about overall package, and I'll give you examples, Saka to me is doing a good job with the overall package, because supply, demand, consumer engagement, sales are pretty close to matching up. He's not sitting on a lot of inventory. Another one that does it in a completely different way is Roma Craft. Supply, demand, consumer engagement. Nick had a little bit of a problem with production, which has, difficult sometimes to control, outside of his control. He's pretty close to being there. Perdomo, I think, does a pretty amazing job in the U.S. market.
Casey, allow me to throw a curveball on you in regards to that question, please.
Sure.
With what you just said, do you believe that being vertically integrated is a necessary part of being successful to reach what you just said?
Not necessarily. It just depends on the relationship you've built. Alan Rubin never owned a factory or a farm in his life, but he partnered up with guys that had factories and farms, and the relationship that he built and the majority of the business that they did out of those factories, he controlled the factories, he controlled the farms. We had about 80 to 85% of everything produced at Raíces Cubanas. And then we had a whole factory out of the 4 factories. Is it 3 or 4 factories that Plasencia owns? The Tobacco Orient factory, we produced 80% of the cigars out of that factory that factory produced. So it was the relationship. Vertical integration is important when you look at guys like Perdomo, which is vertically integrated. But other than growing tobacco, Skip is vertically integrated in every part of the aspect other than the growth of the tobacco. He does a great job, and he buys tobacco and ferments his own tobacco. There's guys that don't ferment, don't have a factory, don't do anything other than import, and do a good job at it. You look at the Caldwell, the Crown Heads that we were talking about a minute ago. They don't make anything. They're pretty much a marketing company in essence. So I guess it depends on, how well you hold the ball in your hands. It's like a soccer match. What percentage of the field do you control the ball? Saka has an unbelievable relationship with Hoya de Nicaragua, and he's not vertically integrated. In essence, he's a marketing company, even though he's going down there and blending them. And then you have vertically integrated like Hoya de Nicaragua or La Aurora, but they've never had a really good presence in the sales side. La Aurora is the oldest factory in the Dominican Republic. They've never had anybody that carried the ball. It was sold by a tiny, small company, Miami Cigars Forever, because of the relationship. And it was, and still is, drop the ball. I would love to have that brand. If you give me La Aurora, I would blow La Aurora up. You give me Hoya de Nicaragua, I'd blow Hoya de Nicaragua up. Hoya de Nicaragua is sold by Drew Estate. Yeah, they do a good job, but it's not their primary product. It's their secondary product. But if it's somebody's primary product, if I'm Mr. Hoya de Nicaragua, it's a different animal. The sales will go through the roof. They have extraordinary cigars. Antonio, Fuerte, and a bunch of others that I could go on about. But so I don't know. Integration is important. I think we fall short on the marketing and sales side more than anything else.
I would like to add one aspect to my earlier answer. And even though it might not tick all the boxes in terms of sales and marketing, I am very fond of the idea of revisiting well-established classics that have been excellent cigars for 20, 30 years and are probably sitting on retailers' shelves because nobody pays attention anymore. And with the whole what's new and only reviewing product that comes to the market anew, I think there's a certain disconnect between some of the iconic blends or cigars that have stood the test of time, but not enough people are revisiting because they're not flashy, they're not in the news all the time, but they're constantly excellent cigars. And with the way prices evolved, and you've touched on this earlier a little bit, you can find excellent value for money with some of them.
It's funny you say that because when I walk into a humidor, and I walk into a lot of humidors, I'm looking for the old stock. I'm looking for the oldest, and I go, what's your oldest stuff in the humidor? What do you got? Before I look around for an hour. The other day I was in a humidor, I found some 100 años, La Auroras, torpedo size for $50 a piece. They were originally $25 when they came out.
100 años.
And they're 10, and these are the second generation. It was like 2003, I think they came out. No, 2012, 2011.
No. They just came out with the 125th. So
no, these are the 100 años before that. They're about 10 years old. And they were, that's one of my favorite cigars, a wonderful wrapper, wonderful cigar. Man, those were fantastic cigars. So yeah, the consumer is controlled by a trend-setting pace where those of us that really smoke a ton of cigars are looking for older stock and the stuff that's older. What do I go back and try that's old all the time? I go back to a lot of old brands and pick up a lot of old brands.
Like some of the stuff I truly adore is from Philip Wynn. Some of his old Felipe
Philip Gregorio?
Yeah, Felipe
Mhm.
Gregorio.
Oh my God. I love that guy and I love his cigars.
Amen.
I love that guy's cigars. The flavor profile and the nuances and the depth of flavors. Paul Grammarian.
Yeah.
PG, yeah.
Paul Grammarian and
PG
Philip Gregorio.
to the roof.
What?
You're talking Macy's language. That
He
We'll let-
said
we'll let
that
Macy
is
PG
the
to the
secret
roof.
man crush, you know.
Yeah, those two brands, extraordinary brands. There's a
Someone
lot of,
signed that right there. One of my treasures.
what is that? Gourmet series?
Yeah, it's signed. Garmirian signed it for me. It's one of
Is
the
that a
few
full box?
boys. Pardon me?
Is that a full box?
It was until I smoked them.
Oh. I was gonna say that's wasted on your palate, but I bet I know where you bought that. You want me to guess?
Well, it's an easy guess. Bottom from K-Work.
From where?
What's your guess?
You bought them in Arizona?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
I
That
would have
changes.
thought
You must have-
Virginia.
No, I bought them
okay.
from the Sun, K-Work.
Oh, at Georgetown, because there's only one guy in
Lord.
town that carries that brown, which is Ambassadors.
Barton.
That's why I figured it was Ambassadors. But anyway, yeah, his son is a great guy. I like his son, Kevorkian.
The
You
ambassador's
got
legendary.
Kevorkian. Listen to you. Kevork.
Yeah, I call him
Kevorkian. He's the
Kevorkian. I've been
murderer.
calling him Kevorkian since he was a little kid. It didn't hit off till there was a real Kevorkian.
You got to go to McLean and go to his store and have him take you into the museum
I can
and give you
imagine,
some of
man.
that stuff.
I can imagine. There's a retailer in California that I go to all the time, and he carries PG, and I go in the back and I dig through shit, 10, 12, 15-year-old cigars, and I sit there and I'm mesmerized by this cigar, and I look at it, and I'm like, oh my God, how do people not smoke this?
Orange County or Mill Valley?
Orange County, you know what it is, Maximar.
Of course. That's why I said orange.
Yes, yeah.
And
Yes.
also Amar is a big fan, or he's very close to Philip as well. So he probably
I'm sorry?
Amar is very close to Philip as well. So he probably has a lot of old Felipe Gregorius lying around.
He does. He does. He has both of those brands very much. Amar's a great friend of mine for many, many years. Very close friend. And he's been a really good friend. He has a lot of old cigars in that store.
Didn't you work for him?
No,
Oh no, it was Jeremiah that worked for him. Jeremy. It used to be his clerk.
yeah, it's the Caldwell guy. Yeah, the bear.
Yeah.
Well, Casey, I just wanted to thank you again wholeheartedly for being on the show, and we'll wrap up our YouTube live stream, and we'll keep the lounge open for everybody who wants to, have a good love and continue smoking the cigars. But I wanted to thank you. It's been such a pleasure and such a privilege to have you on the show, and thanks for everything that you shared with us tonight. Really,
Always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure to talk to you. We could have probably gone 10 hours if we wanted to.
oh, amen. And
anytime,
we'll get back here.
We will,
I think
anytime you
we
want.
certainly need to get you on one of our industry panels for we regularly do these panel discussions about the state of the industry, and I would love to have you on the next one. So I'll definitely reach out.
Anytime, my friend. It's a pleasure to see everybody. It was a pleasure to talk to you all.
It was wonderful, Casey. Many thanks for joining us at the Light 'em Up Lounge. See you all.
Thank you so much.
next week, same time, same station. Until then, light 'em up, guys. Goodbye, everybody.
Amazing.
We're
Take care,
doing.
guys.
Take care, Casey.
Bye.
Thank
you,
you, Chris.
Chris.
Thank you.
Casey, what a wonderful show. Thank you.
Great
Thank
show.
you so much.
We appreciate it.